whole food plant-based. So now what do you replace all those things that we talked about this morning when we go to eating dessert items? And we're going to talk about that a little bit with the first one. So go ahead, Kylie. All right, keep going. All right, so we're going to make some fudgy brownies, and this is actually probably one of the healthiest dessert brownies you can make. In this recipe, it's 5 grams of fiber per serving and 5 grams of protein. It's also low calorie, it's about 150 calories for a larger serving than you're getting in a sample. I made a double recipe today at a 9x13 pan, but typically this recipe is 1 serving in an 8x8, making you 12 pretty significant sized brownies. So this is a flourless dessert, so if you've had flourless cakes, you'll know it's a little bit of a softer brownie. So there is no flour in it. And the main ingredient is black beans. So when you cook whole food plant-based, there's great ways of sneaking in beans in your desserts. I like putting in black beans in a lot of chocolate things. One, visually, it works. And if I do something that is more vanilla or peanut butter or cookie dough style, I like to use chickpeas. White beans also can sometimes be used, but white beans are a lot softer. So white beans are a great substitute in like an icing, maybe if you're trying to cut back on the cashews in something. But typically for your batter, I like black beans for chocolate things, and I like chickpeas for more vanilla flavored or things like that. So we're gonna put 2 cans of black beans in this recipe. So I already have that measured out here. And I'm gonna use my voice for this part, so it's hard to hold a microphone and use your hands for this. This recipe can be made in a food processor or a blender, which is also nice. So you probably have one of those. I'm just gonna dump in 2 cans that I have here. We're gonna add in 12 pitted medjool dates. Now that would be like 1 date per brownie. So it's still very low calorie, so you can think about that. Sometimes when people see 12 pitted dates, they kind of go, oh my gosh, that's a lot of dates. Remember, this makes 12 servings. If you don't have wet dates are like picked off the tree ripe. They're shipped generally around September to December. I buy them from date farms and get them shipped because we've never really had a fresh date. It is kind of out of this world, much different than the dates you're going to buy at Giant Eagle or at the store. It's like caramel. If you have wet dates, which is what I have today, I'm using up the last of my wet dates, my freezer for guys, because they don't come back to September in season. You don't need to soak them in hot water because they're so soft. If you just buy dates from the grocery store, you can soak them in hot water, pitted, and that will help your blender and make everything nice and creamy and smooth. So that's important. But I'm not doing that because you guys are getting the last of my wet dates. We have half a cup of unsweetened cocoa or cacao. It doesn't matter. Either one is your preference. You can also use a caffeine-free version of that if you want, but half a cup for that chocolatey flavor. That pre-measured. We want it to taste like chocolate. We're going to hide the black beans as much as possible. We're also going to add 1/3 of a cup of a plant milk. It doesn't matter which one. Sometimes when you cook savory things, I tend to tell people to avoid oat milk because oat milk naturally is just a little bit sweeter. So with baking, you could use whatever you want though. So I have almond today just because this is what I had, but you can do soy, hemp, oat, whatever you'd like for this. Cashew. That's going to help it out a little bit with the soft black beans as well. And then we're going to make a flax egg real quick. It's going to take a couple minutes, so you're going to use your imagination a little bit. We'll let it sit while I talk. A flax egg is a great replacement for an egg in baking. And how you make that is you make some flax seed that's ground up. It's usually called flax mill when you buy it in the grocery store, or you can grind it up at home. You want to make sure it's ground, and you mix it with water, and you let it sit, and it gels up. If you can't or don't want to use flax, you also can use chia seeds that's ground in the same version, and it'll do the same thing. So this is going to be an egg replacement. So there's 2 flax eggs in here. So it's 2 tablespoons of flax meal to 6 tablespoons of water. 1 flax egg is half of that. So 1 to 30, you can think of. So I have 6 tablespoons of water measured out. And I like to use at the beginning because by the time I get to add this, you know, it's set up, but for right now. 2 tablespoons of ground flax seeds. We're gonna let that mix up and just let it sit here. It's very like thin right now, but you're gonna see it's gonna gel up in about 5 minutes. So we're gonna let that sit out for a minute. We can use some vanilla powder, vanilla bean powder. It's just vanilla beans that they've ground down to a powder. You can use extracts if you want. Sometimes extracts have added sugar and alcohol, so just keep that in mind if those are things you're avoiding. I just get powder at Amazon. It is pricey, like all vanilla is, but a pouch lasts a really long time, and I think it's like under $10 for a big pouch, and I bake all the time with it and make recipes, so it is, I find, a lot better tasting. Once you have vanilla bean powder, it's hard to go back to extracts and things, but it's about a teaspoon in this, and it's just ground. If you buy it in the store and you see that your vanilla bean powder is white, it typically has sugar and other things in it. It should be dark brown. Like if you bought an actual vanilla bean and scraped out the inside is what's in here.
Where did you buy that?
I bought it on Amazon. So they don't usually sell vanilla bean powder with one ingredient in the stores unless you buy the actual pods, which then is going to be really expensive. They're like, if you go to the spice section, they're like $17 for like 3 little pods, like, and you have to scrape it out. I think buying it from a store like that when someone else has already done it is much more cost effective. But Amazon carries it. I'm sure some other stores online do too. And then we're going to do a teaspoon of baking powder and half a teaspoon of baking soda for today. I actually have some salt-free baking soda and baking powder, if anyone wants to come up and write down the name of it, that I bake with all the time. And we're just going to chuck everything into the food processor for right now. You can do it as the recipe says and fold it in, but for purposes for today, we're just going to, it'll be fine either way. So some baking powder. And if you're avoiding salt, these are really great products. And then half a teaspoon of baking soda. All right, and then there's chocolate, optional chocolate. So when you go to the grocery store and you look at your chocolate options, when you go to the chocolate chips, a lot of them are gonna have dairy and sugar in them. There is a convenient option that I found at Giant Eagle. You can go and buy a block of baking chocolate. That's 100% one ingredient, just unsweetened chocolate. I will leave this up for you. And all you do is you put it on a cutting board and rough chop it. It won't be chocolate chips, but it can be rustic when you take it somewhere, or if you're melting it in something, it doesn't really matter. So this is a great option that you can go today and pick up. You don't have to order online. There is a brand I also like that actually sells chocolate chips, which is called Santa Barbara Chocolate. They're from Santa Barbara, California, and they ship chocolate chips that are one ingredient as well, which I keep in the freezer. I brought some of those today to share with you guys and show you, but they're like little discs, and that's a great option as well. Sometimes you can find chocolate chips that are date sweetened and some other options, but I just try to find it when it's just pure chocolate when I add it. Now, as your whole food plant-based, your taste buds do change a bunch. I was always a milk chocolate person. I was never at Easter gonna go for the dark chocolate, and now I can have just straight unsweetened dark chocolate and love it, and it's decadent and wonderful. So you can add that in too, and you can blend it or fold it in. It'll melt however you'd like into it. So we're gonna add that. All right, so we're gonna pulse this. And again, a food processor or a Vitamix works blender. Going until there's no black beans, right? And all the dates are broken up. So that's really important. So you just want to keep it going until it's nice and smooth. And again, you want to put that flax egg in. So this has been sitting for just like, maybe not 5 minutes quite, but you can see that there's only a little bit of liquid at the top. It's pretty thick now. I let that sit for just a little bit more until it totally gels up, and that's our egg replacement. So that also would go in. Okay, go ahead in the next one.
What was the ratio with that?
It's 1 tablespoon of flax meal to 3 tablespoons of water, and we did, there's 2 in this recipe. Okay, so I like to use an 8x8 pan for this. You can use a variety of different things, but like how are you gonna get your baked goods to come out without spraying it with oil or butter in your dish? Couple options. I like using silicone baking pans, which you can buy online, which are nice because they kind of come out, you don't have to coat it with anything. Or if I have a glass dish, what I like to do is I like to take parchment paper, and just a trick is that you can crumble up your parchment paper to make it more malleable, and then it'll fit your pan instead of it like sticking out and looking weird. So you can crumble it up really fine, and then it'll mold to what your dish is. So that way you don't have to like fight with it to stick down, or have it up and you're pouring your batter and it's kind of going everywhere. So that's a really easy way of using like any of the baking gear you already have at home, and you just need parchment paper for it. Go ahead. Next one. Okay, so just some examples of like egg replacements and oil replacements when you bake. My favorite is the flax and chia to make an egg replacement. Also, applesauce can work. Baking is more of a science than cooking, right? So sometimes people ask me, can I use this instead of that? And it just depends. A lot of it's experimental, just like baking in general. So I say, have an open mind when you're trying to transition old recipes to new ones, when you're trying to mess around and make maybe things have what you have at home. It might work, it might not, but keep an open mind when you do that. But those are some great options to replace oil or eggs with. And then for sugar parts, so I use dates today. I love using dates to sweeten things. I feel like it's a very neutral dried fruit, so that's why people use it a lot. So you can use other dried fruits as well. We make something called a date paste, which is 1 cup of water to 1 cup of dates, 1-to-1. Blend it in a blender and it makes a paste. You can do that with any dried fruit. So one way that I keep things interesting, or sometimes I tweak even my own stuff, is I'll use a different dried fruit. So dried apricots with hot water. Blend it up, you have apricot paste. Prunes, you have prune paste. Raisins, and sometimes it's more affordable to do it that way too. Dried cherries, Trader Joe's has a ton of dried fruit. That's just one ingredient. Nuts.com is another great website too that sells dried fruit of a variety of things. And that can change, the flavor of it slightly, so you can kind of play with what you like. I also like, of course, fresh fruit and things is a great sweetener. And date sugar. So date sugar is just dehydrated dates pulsed down to be a sugar. So another question I get a lot is, can I use something else for date sugar? Can I use date paste? I don't have date sugar. And you really want to stick to how it actually is physically. So if you have a granulated sugar, you want to stick to that. So if you're working on a recipe and it calls for like white cane sugar, and you're like, what can I replace it with? Date sugar is a great option because the makeup is the same. If you want to use something that is a wet, let me think of an option. If something has like applesauce and you're trying to tweak it, or if it has more of a wet batter, you could use the date paste. So those are kind of great options as well for it. But this is the batter would be ready. I'd pour it into my pan. For a flourless one, you just want to make sure it cracks on top. The outside should be nice and firm, and then the inside would be soft. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoy.
So yeah, like I made them, and the inside looked undone. Like it looked really fudgy and wet.
Yeah.
Is that okay? It seemed to firm up as it.
Yeah, so the goal is to let it cool completely before you cut them. You can even pop them in the refrigerator as well. That'll help a little bit more. But also that we're putting chocolate in, you're melting it. So sometimes you could put the toothpick in and you hit melted chocolate. It's kind of hard to tell. With the flourless ones, it's going to be a softer. Cracked on top. And it should, like, if you can move it and it like looks to like Jello, it needs a little bit longer. Okay. Yeah.
I snack on dates and figs.
Figs are another good one.
But